By the year 2050, scientists estimate that half the people on Earth will be nearsighted. Not need reading glasses at 50 inches nearsighted. Actually nearsighted, blurry world past a few feet, squinting at street signs. Depending on a piece of curved glass or plastic just to see a face clearly across a room. Now here's the strange part. Dig up skeletons from 10,000 years ago. Hunter-gatherers, early farmers, people who never saw a book in their lives, and you'll find almost no evidence of the eye condition that now affects billions of us. Some isolated populations that still live traditional lifestyles today have nearsightedness rates under 5%. Compare that to places like Seoul, Taipei, or Singapore, where up to 90% of young adults now need glasses just to see clearly. So, what changed? Did evolution just forget to finish building the human eye? Or did we build a world our eyes were never designed for? Let's figure out what actually broke our eyesight, and why the people who lived closest to nature almost never needed glasses at all. Before we go back in time, it helps to understand what's actually going wrong inside a nearsighted eye, because it's not really about weak vision. It's about shape. A healthy eyeball is roughly round, like a marble. Light comes in through the cornea, passes through the lens, and lands precisely on the retina at the back, the layer of light-sensing cells that send signals to your brain. When that lands exactly where it should, you see a sharp image, whether the object is 6 inches away or 6 miles away. Nearsightedness, the medical term is myopia, happens when the eyeball grows too long, front to back. Instead of light focusing directly on the retina, it focuses just in front of it. Anything far away comes out blurry, while anything close still looks fine. That's why nearsighted people can read a book perfectly, but can't read a road sign. Here's the part that surprises most people. Myopia isn't just something you're born with. In most cases, it's something that develops during childhood, as the eyeball is still growing. And the way it grows can be shaped, quite literally, by how a child uses their eyes every day. That single fact is the key to this whole mystery. If eye growth responds to environment, then a species that evolved outdoors, scanning open horizons for tens of thousands of years, would have built very different eyes than a species raised indoors, staring at objects a foot from its face. In the 1960s, a researcher named Francis Young ran one of the most revealing experiments in the history of eye science. He traveled to remote communities in Alaska where Inuit populations had lived a traditional hunting lifestyle for generations. He tested the eyesight of the older generation, people who had grown up entirely outdoors, hunting, tracking, and reading distant terrain their whole lives. Nearsightedness among them was almost non-existent. Some estimates put it below 2%. Then he tested their children and grandchildren, the first generation to attend Western-style schools, sit at desks, and read books for hours a day. In that single generation, myopia rates jumped to over 50%. Same genetics, same ancestry, same Arctic sunlight. The only thing that changed was how people were using their eyes day to day. This wasn't a one-off. Similar patterns have shown up again and again around the world. In Aboriginal Australian communities, in populations across the Pacific, and later, most dramatically, in East Asia. In a single human lifetime, entire populations went from having some of the sharpest natural distance vision on record to some of the highest myopia rates ever measured. If this were purely genetic, that kind of shift should take hundreds of generations, not one. Something about the modern environment itself was reshaping human eyeballs in real time. To understand why ancient eyes turned out differently, picture what an actual day looked like for someone living, say, 30,000 years ago. They wake up outside, or near the mouth of a cave open to daylight. From the moment their eyes open, they are bathed in natural sunlight, which even on a cloudy day is dramatically brighter than almost any indoor lighting humans use today. We're talking tens of thousands of lux outdoors versus a few hundred lux in a well-lit room. Throughout the day, their eyes are almost constantly focused on the middle and far distance. They're scanning a tree line for movement, judging the distance to a herd of animals, tracking a bird across the sky, watching a river bend far ahead. Even close-up tasks, knapping stone tools, weaving cordage, tending a fire, were interspersed with long stretches of looking far away. Because survival demanded constant awareness of the wider environment, a predator doesn't announce itself from 3 feet away. It's spotted from 50 yards in the tree line, in peripheral vision. This constant shifting between near and far, combined with enormous amounts of natural light, turns out to matter enormously for how a growing eye develops. Bright light triggers the release of a natural chemical in the retina called dopamine, which appears to slow down the elongation of the eyeball during childhood. Frequent distance focusing gives the eye regular signals that it's already the correct shape and doesn't need to keep growing longer. In other words, the ancient environment was completely by accident, one long continuous program of natural myopia prevention. Nobody knew that's what was happening. It was just what daily survival looked like. Now flip that picture completely. Picture a typical day for a child today in almost any modern city. They wake up indoors. They eat breakfast indoors. They ride to school in a car or bus, then spend 6 or 7 hours indoors at a desk, looking at a book or a screen roughly 12 to 18 inches from their face. After school, more homework, then more screen time, a phone, a tablet, a television, all viewed at close range, indoors, under artificial lighting that might be 1/100th as bright as an overcast sky. By some estimates, children in heavily urbanized parts of East Asia now spend as little as 30 minutes a day outdoors. Compare that to a childhood spent almost entirely outside, scanning open terrain as would have been completely normal for the overwhelming majority of human history. Researchers now describe this using a fairly simple idea. The eyeball is a growing structure, and growing structures respond to the signals they receive. An eye that spends years being told, through dim light and constant close focus, everything worth seeing is a foot away, will often grow to match that world. It elongates, and once it elongates too far, that shape is largely permanent. Glasses and contact lenses don't fix the underlying shape. They just bend incoming light so it lands correctly on a retina that's now in the wrong place. This is why myopia has exploded fastest in exactly the places where childhood moved indoors fastest and hardest. Dense cities across East Asia, where intense academic pressure means many children spend nearly all their daylight hours studying inside. It's also why, in some large-scale trials, simply adding an extra 40 minutes of outdoor time to a school day measurably reduced how many children developed myopia without changing anything about how much they studied or read. Nothing about human DNA changed in the last 60 years. What changed was the world our eyes are grown inside. At this point, you might be thinking, people have been reading for thousands of years. Ancient scholars, monks, scribes, copying manuscripts by candlelight for hours on end? Surely they should have gone nearsighted too. And some of them almost certainly did. Historical records do mention nearsightedness among scribes and scholars in ancient Rome, China, and the Islamic Golden Age. Aristotle himself apparently described people who could only see things held close to their face. But here's the crucial difference. Literacy was rare. For the vast majority of human history, the number of people doing sustained close-up reading was tiny, a narrow slice of scholars, clergy, and elites, not entire populations. Everyone else, the farmers, herders, hunters, and laborers who made up almost all of humanity, still spent their days working outdoors, under real sunlight, with their eyes doing what they'd evolved to do. It's only in the last century, and especially the last few decades, that near constant close-up, indoor visual work became the default experience of childhood for a majority of the human population. That's an extraordinarily narrow window in evolutionary terms to expect our eyes to adapt to. Genetics obviously plays some role. Myopia does tend to run in families, and certain gene variants are linked to higher risk. But genes alone can't explain a population going from 2% myopia to over 50% in one generation. Or East Asian nations watching myopia rates climb from around 20 to 30% a few decades ago to 80 to 90% in young adults today. Genes don't move that fast. Environments do. The current scientific consensus treats it as an interaction. Some people may carry a genetic predisposition, but whether that predisposition actually turns into full-blown myopia seems to depend heavily on how much bright outdoor light and distance focusing a child gets while their eyes are still developing, roughly through childhood and early teenage years. Which means, in a strange way, ancient humans didn't have naturally better eyes than we do. They simply lived inside the one environment that happened to build eyes correctly, almost by accident, every single day. So, why didn't ancient humans need glasses? Not because evolution gave them some special gift we've since lost. It's because their entire world was, without anyone intending it, the perfect eye development program. Endless bright daylight, constant long-distance focusing, and very little forced close-up work in early childhood. We didn't lose that world through some dramatic event. We built our way out of it, gradually one classroom, one screen, one indoor childhood at a time, trading wide horizons for closer and closer objects. Until, for half the people on Earth, the world past arm's length has started to blur. It's a strange thought somewhere in the world today, in a handful of the last remaining traditional hunting and herding communities, there are children whose eyesight, without any intervention at all, would be sharper at 50 feet than most of ours will ever be, not because of who their ancestors were, but simply because of the sky they grew up looking at. If you've ever wondered why eyeglasses only became a normal part of human life in roughly the last 100 years, now you know it's not that eyes got worse. It's that the world got closer.